Welcome back to Bitcoin Season 2. I'm Charlie Spears with Blockspace Media. Bitcoin Season 2 live. We're broadcasting on both X, formerly known as Twitter, and YouTube. We do two shows, more of a podcast format, and then this live show on Thursday nights. Bitcoin Season 2 features new ideas and conversations from new voices on Bitcoin. We kind of mash the technical and cultural together. We talk a little bit of ordinals. We'll talk a bit of mining company acquisitions, sometimes some Bitcoin technical discussion. Again, Bitcoin Season 2 is produced by Blockspace Media. We've got a whole host of content you may like, a newsletter twice a week, Monday and Friday. Hit up blockspace.media for our website to subscribe to that. We also have the Gwart Show, a broader kind of crypto cross-compatibility cross-topic show hosted by Gordy Gwart, the hottest person on crypto Twitter right now. And of course, the Mining Pod, the most popular and widest watched podcast in Bitcoin mining. So I'll start off with some news and some events and some data. Going to review that, but stick around because we've got Eloc of the Cypherpunk Lab on the tail end of this. He's going to walk us through and kind of talk us through the OR development process, and in particular, his idea and proposal for the Recursive Runes endpoint. A lot of people ask, well, okay, runes are out. What happens now? Well, let's continue discussion on further development. And that's where Eloc comes in. Glad to have Eloc join us. Well, without further ado, I'm going to launch right into my favorite thing to talk about, which is what's going on in the mempool today. So, fees are back down. You know, if you were living under a rock, the halving happened over the weekend. We saw the halving block garner a total of 37 Bitcoin in additional fees, which is wild. So since then, we saw a major price spike. We saw multiple blocks, probably 200 blocks worth of like almost back-to-back fees, far surpassing the block subsidy issuance. This created what's weirdly enough, like even though the mining profitability halved at block 840,000, not block mining profitability, the block subsidy got cut in half at the block 840K. The profitability per unit of hash rate actually about tripled. So that lasted for about 48 hours and then declined, and now we are back at I might call this a normal fee rate in the mid 2-digit fee rate. Let's just take a look at just the kind of the amount of transactions sitting in the mempool right now. This is the past few weeks. We've seen a lot of transactions in the 20-30 sat per VByte clear, dip into the 6 to 8 sat per VByte strata, and then that's kind of where we sat. We touched back into the single digits a bit. I feel a bit like a trader here, but basically, like, we saw in a very short amount of time a ton of fees come in, bidding up against each other to compete to get into this very narrow window of block space over the weekend right after the halving. So since then, we haven't seen quite as much demand, but I mean, again, we're sitting in the double digits for fees, which I want to remind you again, this time a year ago, that was still unbelievably expensive. We've got Eloc towards the end of this, and I remember I've talked with him a lot about our mutual shared pain on fees. So the next thing, here's a great chart. I don't know if it's published yet from Coinmetrics, but Parker Merritt, friend of the show over at Coinmetrics, put together this great chart showing the runes transaction fees per block. So this is a great visualizer of just how many what the absolute fees per block were, which were in the 20 to 37 Bitcoin per block fee rate range, and then overlaid with this orange here, which is the percent of the block which is attributed to runes. So you actually see that even though fees went down from block 840 to 400 to 840 600, which was about Monday through Wednesday this week, even though the actual fees from runes went down, we saw the overall Runes transaction percentage as per block still remain over 80%. So even though we've gone down now, like runes still account for over a fifth of block space. This is still considerable. I think a lot of people expect to become rich overnight. Some people maybe did, but I know there's a little bit of the like momentum is out of the market right now. But yet we see the market continue to demand to mint and transact on runes. Here's another good chart. Again, runes transactions per block, mirroring this again from Parker Merritt at Coinmetrics. The main news story I think today was the Epic Sat being auctioned off from via BTC. So not a lot of people put this connection together, but Via BTC as a company and the founder of the CEO of Via BTC also runs an exchange, more of an Asia-centric exchange called CoinEx. So Via BTC, maybe not as loudly as some would like, announced that they were going to auction off this Epic Satoshi, the first sat of the halving that they got. So this auction took place over about 2 days, I believe, and started at a Bitcoin. And in the final hours, went from about 16 Bitcoin for the bid to 33.3 Bitcoin. That is $2.155 million for a single Satoshi. Now, I've done a little bit of discussion and commentary on the kind of, if we were to track the mathematical rarity of this and compare the uncommon Satoshi current market price and normalize and adjust for rarity, this is actually quite a good deal for the buyer of this Epic Satoshi. So congrats to whoever that was. I look forward to seeing it perhaps rolled out in some collection capacity going forwards. Just a comment, I mentioned this on the mining pod earlier this week, that if we add the 33.3 Bitcoin for this block and we add the halving block total reward, which is 40.7 Bitcoin, that means that the overall take for Via BTC for this block alone, the halving block, is close to 80 Bitcoin. This is very, very significant in my opinion, because that makes it the largest US dollar payment, the largest US dollar value captured for a block ever, if we take out a couple fat fingers, which were verified as fat finger transactions and returned back to the original sender. So this now takes the number one spot in the most valuable block ever mined if we consider the holistic take for Via BTC. I don't see a lot of people doing, ordinals data, but here we are. I like to always hit this. This is from Data Always, one of my favorite charts to frequent. 66.2 million inscriptions, 54 million of those are BRC20 events. If we look at the cumulative inscriptions, this is an indicative chart. Like, yes, while inscription activity is going down throughout February, it's actually picked back up. Even though runes are the hot narrative, inscriptions continue to remain strong. They're obviously in the past week they've been very de minimis, but that's just because everyone's minting runes. Fee has been considerably high. I think we should see this pick back up. Overall, $250,000 spent on fees for inscriptions. Going over to market data, this is Domo's dashboard. He has identified over 500, over 500,000 unique users. Again, this is tracked by unique wallet address, and I believe he normalizes a bit for this as well. 2.6 million trades and over $3.7 billion in volume traded to date for ordinals and inscriptions. Now let's break out the tweets. One of my favorite tweets this week is from Jake.Sats, Jake Gallen. He did some great deep dive and collected basically a great list of the first 10,000 runes and their associated etcher. So that is which Twitter account or team is behind each ticker. Obviously, Casey Rodamore at Rodamore called dibs on rune number 0, uncommon goods. But then we saw out of the blue, in my opinion, a rune called Fehu, Fehu. Their Twitter account is tagged here. Decentralized Cyberkongs, they did a big airdrop. Cyberkongs, again, a large ETH collection. And then I believe there is going to be some commentary on exactly how the team who got this second place rune actually executed it. I think if you follow me on Twitter, I'll tag those people as they um, as that news happens. Obviously, pups, company called Sapflow, Maven's Bot, Rooms Whispers, Ordzar. This is a great list by Jake. Thanks for doing the heavy lifting. My favorite feature this week that came out, I think this is a bit underrated, is Tristan, who is building OrdisScan, OrdisScan.com, really becoming one of the best performant and most feature complete ordinals explorers out there. And I actually want to point out that a feature he added this week, which is the ability to explore transactions and look at the runes per transaction, actually kind of broadens what I even call this explorer. This explorer, OrdisScan, now is basically a block explorer. What do I mean by that? Well, okay, let's take a transaction over on mempool.space. I pulled up a random transaction. This transaction happened 40 minutes ago. And if you're on mempool.space, you can look at this and you think, okay, it's the classic, split here. We see this pill shape here. That's an output. That's an operaturn output. And the average person might not be able to tell that this operaturn is actually where the rune message or the edict is located. But if you take this transaction, you copy it, and you put it into OrdisScan, you can now see that this transaction contains an operaturn with a runestone message here. This transaction is a mint transaction for the runestone, or for the rune code monkey unit. I don't know what this is. And it mint anyway, they minted 5,000 of them. So this is a really cool feature here. And you can track rune sends, runes mints. So shout out to Tristan for building out this very interesting and compelling feature. I think OrdisScan is now earns the title for not just an Ordinals Explorer, but a Runes Explorer, and overall now Block Explorer. So that's been very interesting to watch. Now moving away from just Ordinals talk, in the more Bitcoin tech land, one of the big narratives has been that the Bitcoin Bips repo, BIP stands for Bitcoin Improvement Proposal. The Bips repo has not really been able to stay on top of managing the proposals. This has been kind of controversial, as there was, until a few days ago, only one editor of this repo, and that's the somewhat infamous Luke Dash Jr. And this past week, several new editors were added to the Bips repo, so they can now give and assign these Bitcoin improvement proposals. They can assign numbers to them. So the big one this week was that this new Bips editor, Roast Beef, assigned the opcat proposal BIP number 347. Now, if you remember, Udi Werthimer and the Wizards were jokingly saying, we already have a BIP number. That's really fun. But they finally got a real BIP number according to the Bips repo, BIP number 347. This is for re-enabling opcat. Goes hand in hand with the Tapper Wizards Quantum Cats. Tapper Wizards Quantum Cats, campaign and initiative to make Bitcoin fun again. This was co-authored by Armin Saburi and Ethan Heilman. And I personally am happy to see opcat finally get a number. And this is not the only BIP that got a number. We also got several other ones: BIP 331, Ancestor Package Relay, and then OptX Hash, which is very similar in the kind of the spiritual successor to OptCTV from Jeremy Rubin. So lots of BIP numbers going out, and a lot of development happening on the Bips repo front. If you've been paying attention to Bitcoin Season 2, you can see some of the icicles and frozen ossification being shaken off right now in the broader Bitcoin space. So I like to see that. And Anyway, so that's it for most of my kind of news hits for the week. I'm gonna bring up an old friend of mine, Elock, to the stage. I hope I can get Elock's cool. I'll take you down until you get your video set up, Elock. Let me know. You.
How's it going?
Okay, there we go. We got the video up. What's up, beautiful?
Hey, how's it going, Sean? Yeah, it's been a crazy happening. How's your happening been?
It's been very, very crazy. Tell me about what I'm looking at here. This is I don't think this is what you actually look like in real life. This is a blob.
Yeah, this is a blob. So like during New York, we air blobbed out like a 10,000 delegate inscription collection to various communities, and like our communities, like Cypherpunk Lab. And yeah, it's like all on chain using like 3JS and React 3 Fiber. So it was like hundreds of libraries coming in through recursion. So like we'll get into that in a bit here. And yeah, and they're all on sats that are named blob.
Which is really cool. It's kind of the quadruple threat using every, lots of the components of lots of the techniques and tricks of the Ord client to distribute and as you say, air blob or maybe airdrop these inscriptions to people. And then your particular blob visualization is also kind of a new development, right? Like you've got this roped in through your voice, right?
Yeah, so we just did like a 3D scene, like you can see on our Twitter, Book of Blob. We posted like a 3D scene with a blob. So we like in there we like were animating to the music. So I just like wired it up to my microphone for this interview here.
Yeah. So about this interview, so I kind of wanted to touch on, I want to touch on Bitcoin technical stuff, in particular stuff that ideas in the ordinals camp. And now, if you talk about ordinals, you kind of are talking about runes a lot. But a lot of people who are building with runes probably haven't. It might not be like well disseminated that runes are implemented in the same client that Casey implemented ordinals in, which means that if you've been working on the Ord client for the past year, as you have, then you are kind of very well positioned to have some insight to interesting technical developments that we could do with runes. And this is where you come in, because you proposed what you call the Recursive Runes Endpoint Outpoint. And before I ask you what that is, I want you to kind of like pull back and explain to me what actually is an endpoint in the context of Ord and inscriptions.
So yeah, like let me like go back even further. So like
Okay.
typically with like an inscription you would put data on Bitcoin and in a Bitcoin transaction. So that could be like an image or video or like HTML to like run a website. So that's where like a lot of like interesting dynamic like inscriptions come from is like HTML. So like the whole web's like written in HTML. So you can do a lot with that. So what Casey had proposed, I think it's like last summer, we had like recursion, the first recursion. And so like it's some weird computer science term that kind of got a weird name in the ordinal ecosystem, to be honest. But basically what it means is now I can like get data from another inscription into like the current inscription. And that only works with like JavaScript and like HTML inscriptions. Like yeah, so like he opened up the box to be able to create like JavaScript libraries, like a whole bunch of JavaScript libraries, like this blob, like just pulling in 100 inscriptions to do like all this stuff. So like that's what recursion was able to do, and we were able to like create the blobs with, like basically zero data on each inscription, because it's just referencing like one JavaScript file for like the entire collection. So like that's what recursion like allowed us to do, is be able to like build pieces off like other inscriptions. And then we have what are called like recursive endpoints. So like what that basically means is you know, when like you put your URL bar up in the web browser, like you go to a certain website, right? So like with ordinals, when we got recursion, they opened up the website to be able to get just other inscriptions. So like now my inscription can open up like a URL bar basically to your other inscription and like talk to it. So like we started to create these recursive endpoints. I think it was like last October, and like I kind of spearheaded like starting it with the child endpoint and the SAT endpoint. So what those do is they allow you to update your inscriptions like after they've been inscribed, basically.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. It was a really popular. I remember this narrative was kind of bubbling up in September of last year, and it's, you know, the most notable famous collection are the pizza ninjas from Trevor and the gang using the recursive endpoint. But this is kind of the brainchild of you, and you actually demonstrated doing this. I think we talked about this. I'm gonna put you on the spot. The Rug Me collection, if you
Yeah,
want
the
to throw
rugby.
back to that, like, you know, you were kind of one of the first to be like, I'm going to implement this idea using my own my own, like, you know, recursive child endpoint.
Yeah, because like the joke was like now we can rug collections and change it after the fact. So I was just like, okay, I'll make a collection called Rug Me, you know, to just like run that meme like right off the bat. And it did the child and stat endpoint, and like most viewers probably don't know what any of that means. But yeah, with inscriptions you can have children, which make up like a collection. So like all 10,000 blobs were children of a single inscription that was the parent for all the blobs. So like what the child endpoint does is I'm able to know all the children. So I'm able to figure out like who my brothers and sisters are like in the blob collection, for instance.
Yeah, and so we introduced this idea of recursion, and the particular endpoint is a way to net for the inscriptions according to the ORD client and dominant interpretation of the protocol. That's a way for these inscriptions to know how to navigate to other inscriptions and to navigate to other data within Bitcoin's uh, like data layer, right?
Yeah, and like all on top of with the Ordinals protocol. So like um the child endpoint, for instance, like that's just like an on-chain data structure that like we read to be like, oh, these are children. And like the stat endpoint, we need to know like where all the satoshis are. So like you have to like put this lens on top to be able to like understand how these like very dynamic inscriptions are actually able to like work and function.
So that leads us to your proposal for the recursive runes endpoint output. And you tweeted, what is it? A couple days ago now. It's kind of blown up. Quote, "It's fucking time for recursive runes. Everybody jumps on this train." Um, and I do enjoy kind of like, so yeah, so I love this I love this idea. I'm not sure the best way to implement it, but I've got you here on the spot. Explain to me. Imagine you first talking to like a degen and trying to sell them on this idea. What does a recursive runes endpoint output do? Just for the layperson.
Well, like the catchy name is that like now the data that we were talking about that's on chain, so being able to know like children of an inscription, now like with this new endpoint you would be able to know what runes are like on an inscription. So like technically on Bitcoin, you can have runes and inscriptions on the same output. And so like Bitcoin works with unspent outputs. So like all your Bitcoins on an output. So that's like on the base layer, and runes is like an output protocol. So like the entire protocol is based on data that's in op returns that are in Bitcoin outputs. So like for a long time, I've really wanted to have like the output recursively, like before like runes were even a thing. And yeah, and LIFO has also another PR with a similar approach to be able to get how much runes are on an inscription. So basically, you would be able to know like if this inscription holds a certain amount of rune tokens, and it could be like any rune token that you want to specify.
Yeah, maybe we'll start with because I think yeah, I think LIFO FIFO was probably the first to actually throw up a PR on this a couple weeks ago. Quote, supercharge inscriptions with runes, PR 3538. And he just wanted to like introduce the concept, right? Because in degen world, we always need to know what the next thing is. And this could be one of the next metas, which is interlinking the inscription itself with the balance of runes on the output where that inscription might exist if the sat's in that output. And then you came out with an alternative recursive runes endpoint output. Can you talk me through yours first,
So
and then
mine's like
maybe
for output. So LIFO made a recursive endpoint, which is a really good one that we've always wanted forever, which is the inscription endpoint. So now you can ask, hey, what's on this inscription? And you get like what output it's on. You get what SAT it's on. You get like how big it is and like what file type it is. So like that like opened up a lot of powerful things combined with like the SAT endpoint, like the game of or GOB, that one like on-chain game people were playing. So like those are powered by the SAT endpoint and the inscription endpoint. So LIFO's approach is to like have like another extension on the inscription endpoint, and then you ask, hey, does this inscription like hold any runes balances? But mine's like a different approach because I just want to know about like the output in general, like data that's on the output and inscription holds, because there's more information there. For instance, like you get to know the satoshis that are on that output, so then you can start activating inscriptions if they have like a block 9 sat next to an inscription or something. So yeah, you'll be able to know like if that output also contains inscriptions and runes, and then if that inscription is aware of the runes on itself, then it can be like, okay, I have 2 uncommon goods, so like, I'm going to turn the color green or whatever. Just as like a simple example.
yeah, you could the blobs say blob could change colors depending on how many blob runes you had on that particular output. It's a simple concept. Maybe the blob gets hotter and hotter and hotter and more red, the more blob runes you have in it or something. But pretty.
So fun fact with the inscription endpoint, I just like haven't had time. But like you can do this with Bitcoin now. So like you can supercharge an inscription. I call it like forged Bitcoin. So like you could forge Bitcoin onto an inscription. So like you could be like, I want to put a whole Bitcoin on the output. And then now that that inscription has like a Bitcoin on it. And then you could change like how it renders if it's got like a full Bitcoin or like half a Bitcoin. So like you can do that today, like on the current version of Ord. But like this would be like adding runes way to do that basically.
So yeah, it's interesting. I kind of want to ask some general questions about like the development process. So you've written this PR. It's pretty simple. It's a pretty simple idea. But it's not super clear like what maybe the optimal implementation for referencing the runes balance on the output is. We've if we look back at the Ord history, I know you've contributed a lot to Ord, spent a lot of time writing PRs and throwing stuff out there, and sometimes something gets merged or implemented, and sometimes it's like iterated on, or the argument being it's going to improve it, going to reduce like some of the unknown externalities. Um, like how does this is kind of a basic, GitHub question, but how does this PR go forwards? Like how will the discussion happen about how we build a runes referencing mechanism into inscriptions?
I mean, so like LIFO created PR and to like really kick it off, and then I referenced my PR and his, and then he referenced his. So like we have a circular kind of dependency there to like have a discussion with both of the PRs. And then yeah, like the Ordinals Coding Club will probably be a good avenue and venue for this too. Because like me and Life have been on stage and like merged our recursive PRs in the past on the Ordinals Coding Club.
Yeah, and it's been pretty clear. Like Casey had, introduced this idea on Ordinals Coding Club a few weeks ago. I don't remember when. I mean, I was there, but I don't remember exactly when. But like, he says that this is a really cool, interesting idea.
Well, he's like, yeah, we're totally doing like recursive runes. So it's like, we're all waiting. So like me and Lifo just like threw some ideas like at the wall, just to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. I mean, that's the beauty of open source, and open invite for contributors. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, so any just general thoughts on the state of Ord? Casey and Raph spent the past 2 or 3 months running full tilt into the runes direction. I'll put you on the spot now and just say you've looked at Ord a lot this past year. You've seen it developed. It's not been easy. It's been a labor of love and sometimes frustration to get this thing, running sufficiently and distributed across the ecosystem. Um, where do you think Ord goes in the next year? You're not inside Casey's mind, obviously, but where do you think Ord continues to be developed? What is your kind of assessment on the state and future of the Ord client post runes?
I mean, Casey said they feel pretty done. I think runes, for the most part, could be done. Like, I don't know if they ever pursue like doing a PSBT marketplace, which would be really based, but like, those could just be like side projects that like aren't like core protocol. Because I think like the core protocol is kind of like coming into a close in a sense, and like these like recursive endpoints are not really protocol level. These are all like client side, and like anyone can go right there on server and do whatever the hell they want, which Post Capone's always been telling me. But
You
we
should
try to
do
keep
that.
consensus. Well, yeah, I was gonna like stream my node, but like the index got messed up, so I don't think I'll be able to stream it. But I've got my PR up, so I can like make my own recursive runes, if I wanted. And like, I was thinking like everyone's already got testnet set up like from runes, so like, what if I just like give them a fork they could run on testnet or something? Because
I know that would be
I
cool.
want it to be more like open, because like a lot of times Casey will just decide like randomly the way to go, and like, and it's his repo, but it's great to have like discussion and stuff.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
really
I think
interesting.
like the protocol in general, like, yeah, I think it's probably gonna like slow down, and like, I don't know, a lot of little things I've been like wanting to have them do. It's been put on the back burner because of runes, So hopefully, like we can, they can kind of get back into some inscription stuff too, and
Yeah,
marry them together with these recursive runes and stuff.
yeah, in a way, like the slowing down of further development, further like major changes to inscriptions related or development is kind of like it's a bit of a, I know it kind of leaves it open for developers like you to start introducing things, now that Ord appears to be more stable, you can introduce, your own things now that you've got a much more proliferated group of people who try out Ord on testnet and signet. You could start introducing some of these like elock special versions or forks or extensions to Ord. You guys have put together the Cypherpunk Lab down there in San Francisco. Do you think you guys will be doing anything like this over the next year?
Well, I've always wanted to have like I don't know, reg test easy, no like command line because it's hard to do. But like I was gonna say like one thing that like shout out to Raf for like putting in these changes that like only I needed basically, but then it's like basically I wouldn't have been able to do Blob without it because like I just had all these testing workflows to like test out really complicated recursion, and like it was just a nightmare to like test it on reg test. And so like I came up with all these like solutions to be able to like pull in inscriptions that are already inscribed so you can test on them. And then so like recently Raf like added a proxy, and that's been like a life changer for like developing inscriptions. So it's like I haven't had any time to like really discuss that part of like how powerful that was like the biggest lift on the whole Ord protocol like the entire year was like being able to like test inscriptions out with like the new content proxy. It's like this little feature that kind of just only I knew about because like I kind of asked for it basically. But yeah, it's just like a slow grind of just like, but I like blew like now like the app blew up, so like I'm having to go through between like 5 versions of Ord just to test because like there's this issue. Casey knows about it, so it's like go back to like the slow grind of like fixing all these little bugs, because we don't have to like get runes out by the happening and stuff.
Yeah, so I look forward to more elocks and more life of FIFOs and more Gregs to add extensions or their own. You use a term like lens, on top of the lens that is Ord. So I'm very bullish on, I would say, maybe the second wave of Ord protocol development. Any last thoughts just before I wrap this up? Are you having fun with runes yourself?
Yeah, yeah, it's been crazy. Just a typical, degen stuff,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like I'm kind of more interested in understanding like how it like implements back to inscriptions and stuff beyond just like having fun meme tokens, and like who knows, like maybe adding utility to inscriptions is like stupid, and it's just like a fun novel thing we do for a few months, but it's just like experimental art, so it's just like fun to just like try these things and like see what people come up with. Like when I saw like Game of Blocks or whatever it was, Gob, I was like, hell yeah, like me and Lifa like put those features in, and now someone's like making this fun little game. So yeah, it's excited for people to like contribute. So like go to the GitHub PRs, and if you're a dev, like contribute to the conversation.
Yep. If you ever hear one thing from Elock, it's head to the GitHub, contribute to the conversation. Elock, thank you so much for joining me again, kind of on a moment's notice. I love talking Ord development, and I really like talking about what you are working on. You are one of the more interesting, driven people in the space. So, where can the viewers and listeners go to find you and your work?
Yeah, so just on Twitter, Elock Remark, ELOCREMARC, and then yeah, the Blob is under Book of Blob, Twitter handle.
And also, shout out Cypherpunk Lab, doing a lot of really cool events over there in San Francisco. I hope to make it down there myself soon. So, anyway,
Yeah, go soon, go soon.
cool.
I'll see
Thanks
you.
a ton. I'm going to take you off and I'm going to close this thing down. Thank you so much for tuning into Bitcoin Season 2. I'm Charlie Spears. Make sure to hit other Blockspace Media content wherever media is found, on all the podcast streaming services, RSS feed, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Subscribe there. Blockspace.media to hit our website and subscribe to our newsletter comes in your inbox. It comes to your inbox twice a week, Monday and Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you next week.